Today's show is sponsored by Indie Film Hustle's Filmmaker Process. We provide filmmakers with professional services to get their films or series funded, finished, and distributed. For more information, go to filmmakerprocess.com. You had some time on Daredevil, obviously, which was, amazing. I just love what you guys did with Daredevil. It was just and it was such a, it's such a lot of pressure because you had to make the fans happy, but you also had to make Netflix happy because this was the first big launch of the Marvel stuff on Netflix. So if Daredevil would have failed, we might have not gotten the rest of the guys, or
probably not. Yeah,
it would have been a lot less seasons of all these other great characters.
Yeah.
How did you deal with that pressure, and how did you just kind of like run into that, or you just said screw it, let's just write?
Well, that was I was on an overall deal at Starz. I'd wrapped up Spartacus. Me in the writers' room had written a full season of a series called Incursion, which was kind of like Aliens meets Band of Brothers. And we were actually at the point prepping to cast when they pulled the plug because it was too expensive. But I was still on this overall deal. So I was being paid a handsome amount of money to sit at home and think up ideas. And I did a script for Starz based on the Italian crime series Romanzo Criminale, and then I was working up some other ideas because they didn't feel that was quite right for them. So I had about 3 months left on this very sweet deal when I got a call from Jeff Loeb again out of the blue, saying, "Hey, I'm working with Drew Goddard on Daredevil," which I knew. I had met with Drew about a year before, and he asked me if I'd be interested in coming in and co-creating it with him. And I said, man, I would like nothing better. Drew Goddard is one of the most brilliant, sweetest guys you could ever meet. And I said, but I'm on this Starz overall deal. I can't leave that. That would be silly money to leave behind. So Loeb calls me up and said, Drew Goddard has to leave. He has a previous commitment to write and direct the Sinister Six movie for Sony. This was before Sony and Marvel made the deal to share Spider-Man. And I said, Jeff, I'm on this overall deal. He goes, well, we could really just come in and hear what we're thinking. So I went in, and Drew Goddard and Jeff Loeb pitched their idea for the show, and Drew had written the first two scripts. A couple of rough drafts for the first two scripts. And I read the scripts, I heard their pitch, and my reaction was, damn it, now I've got to do this because I really like it. So I came on to that, and when I came on, everything was really far behind. We had the first two rough scripts. The third one was being written out of the first 13. We had no production designer, no cast, no anything, and we were going to start shooting sooner than I would have liked. And our goal was to try to get 8 scripts done before we started shooting. I think we got to 6 or 7 because everything was so far behind. But Drew had basically set the table and gave me the menu. And so I was able to cook up the meal, and it was brutal because we didn't have enough time. As often the case, you never have quite enough money, we realized that it was a bit of a tricky situation because we were going into it. People, for whatever reason, didn't really care for the Ben Affleck movie, and I always say. Ben Affleck is a great actor. I think he was a good choice for that role. But this was a time where they made the movie where, it was a different time for comic book movies.
It was more comic booky.
It was more comic booky. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
exactly. It was a little over the top. And what really drew me into the TV show was the fact that they wanted to do a darker, grittier corner of the Marvel universe with the street level heroes. And I grew up loving Daredevil. and the character. And we all just wanted to really do justice to the character. But we realized that the comic book fans would come at it with a bit of hesitation because of the movie. And people outside of the comic book would also be influenced by the movie or didn't know who Daredevil was at all. So really, the way we approached the show was the origin story of Daredevil and the origin story of Kingpin, both at the same time. They were both two sides of the same coin. And there was a lot of, I mean, it was a difficult show because there was all the pressure because it was the first one in this multi-million-dollar 4-show in a, spinoff with the Defenders deal that was completely unheard of. And as we started working on it, Marvel started to get a little nervous that it was a little too dark. So there was some wrestling, and I got to preface by saying I loved everybody at Marvel, Joe Quesada, everybody. I would be in a foxhole with those guys any day of the week. But of course, there's going to be creative wrestling. So I remember at one point, to lighten the show up, the suggestion was made that there should be a funny Russian character that keeps trying to say things in English, but it's wrong. It's kind of a running joke. And I about blew a blood vessel. And I said, no, the Russians don't work unless they're scary. They have to be scary. Let's not water this down. Of course, we can have humor in the show. Not that kind of humor. So it was a grueling, and there was a lot of talk about how far do we push it.
You pushed it pretty far.
Yeah, I obviously, I mean, they brought in the guy that did Spartacus, so there's no surprise there. I was about to say, some of those scenes, I was just like, wow, they went for it. Yeah, it's like the infamous episode at the end of, I think it's episode 4, where Wilson Fisk crushes the Russian brother's head in the car, which Drew had pitched to me. It was the trunk at the time, not the door, but it was the same idea. So when we got to the point of shooting it, we knew, if you look at the scene, you never really see the head being crushed. You see the aftermath. It's more suggestive than anything else, but it's still disturbing. The original cut was like 3 times longer. I mean, it just kept going on where he was banging that guy. And which also brings me to Vincent D'Onofrio. We hadn't cast anybody when I came on. And I saw a picture. I was looking, just randomly on the internet, and I saw a picture of Vincent D'Onofrio with his head shaved. And I'm like, it's the Kingpin. The guy's gigantic. He's a phenomenal actor. I mean, there's nobody else that really fits this bill. And so I went to everybody and I said, we should go after Vincent D'Onofrio. And they said, what are you, crazy? He makes like $1 million an episode. With the Law and Order stuff. There's no way we can afford him. I'm like, can we just try? And they go, no, it'll never work. And then they called me up. And this is a side story. They called me up and said, hey, we got a great idea. It's a little bit outside the box. Richard Gere. I'm like, what? I said, I think Richard Gere is a phenomenal actor. He's amazing. He's not the Kingpin.
No,
it'd be like casting me as Superman. It's just not right. So, but we went down the road, and but Richard Gere turned it down. He wasn't interested. I think he made the right choice. And then it turns out our casting director, Lorraine Mayfield, was friends with Vincent D'Onofrio. She knew him socially, and she said, "Look, let me just reach out to him." Turns out he's a huge Daredevil fan. And he agreed to do it at a greatly reduced price because he loved it. And I remember Jeff Loeb and I having the initial conversation, and he said, let's talk about his shaved head. And we thought, oh, shit, he's not going to want to shave his head. But Vincent said, he's got to have a shaved head, right? I'm going to shave my head. But just so you know, if I've got to come back and do reshoots or something, we might have to use a bald cap if I'm doing another show. And we said, no. anything you want. And him coming on really made such a difference. Him and Charlie Cox. Charlie Cox, who is possibly the sweetest man alive. And Joe Quesada had seen Charlie Cox in something years ago and was convinced that Charlie Cox was the guy. And Charlie came in for an audition, and it was one of the best auditions I've ever seen, but completely wrong. He didn't really know much about the character. In fact, he tells a funny story that shortly before he came in for the audition, he called up his agent and goes, is this guy blind? And they go, yeah, he's blind. So Charlie came in, and because he had read up about Daredevil and Matt Murdock and about his heightened senses, his take on the character was that there was so much information coming in that he was very withdrawn. So he came in and basically kind of played Matt Murdock as kind of like Rain Man. And it was a stunning performance. It was mesmerizing, but wrong. Because, Matt Murdock is a bit of a ladies' man, and we told him, that was fantastic, not quite right. So we gave him some notes. He went away, and he came back a couple of days later and did a completely different performance that was just as fantastic. And a side note there is that he was a very svelte guy. He had never really, he was fit, but he didn't go to a gym or anything. That wasn't his thing. So we immediately put him on a program with a trainer. And the 8 to 12 week transformation that this guy went through is just stunning. When you actually see him with his shirt off and he's got a six pack and all the muscles, he worked out like a devil.
I literally, no pun intended.
Yeah.
Oh no, every time I would see Daredevil, I'm like, God, I gotta get back to the gym. Gotta get back to the gym.
It was amazing.
Yeah.
What he did in such a short period of time.
To watch the rest of this interview, head over to bulletproofscreenwriting.tv.